Boker Tov, Shavua Tov. Today's daf is daf Samach. In K'tubos, as we learned for Yosef Asriel ben Chaim Michal, and unfortunately also for him as well as Elazar ben Reuma. From the top of the page, the Gemara just discussed at the bottom that Beis Hillel holds that if a woman is nursing her child and decides to stop, she forswore herself from nursing the child. I'm talking about her own child. Her husband can force her to nurse because the child could die. If let's say she gets divorced though subsequently, so he can't force her. He can't force her anymore because she's not his wife. But if the child only wanted to nurse for the mother, he knew his mother, then she can be forced to nurse him and payment. He can pay her then. She's not his wife anymore. But she has to accept payment and force the mother to nurse the child because the child could die if he's not nursed. And we're assuming that he had no other options. There was no other. The mother didn't have access to eggs and milk and things like that to support the child. So he said, if the child recognizes the mother and only wants to nurse from her, then she can be forced, with payment, of course, to nurse the child, to be a wet nurse for the child. So the Gemara says at the top of the page, Samach, Ad Kama. When does the child recognize the mother? A newborn baby, give a newborn baby to nurse. Many people hire wet nurses. The baby doesn't know really the nurse, yet they're able to do so. When you say if the child only wants to nurse from its mother, at what point do we examine the child to see if he recognizes the mother and only wants to nurse from her? If he's willing to nurse from anybody, so let the father hire somebody else. Let him hire a wet nurse. But at what point do we examine the child? At 3 months. In other words, unfortunately, explain what it means is that before 3 months, the child does not recognize one woman over another. Whoever gives him to nurse, he'll nurse. Shmuel says 30 days. 50 days. What's this machlokas? I'm Rav Shimon bar Abaya. How long Rabbi Yitzchak was like Rabbi Yitzchak? That it's 50 days. He says it's 50 days, right? Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Yochanan, 50 days. Before that, there's no point in checking. The child will nurse from anybody. He has no preference. At 50 days, maybe recognized. The Gemara says, Bishlam Rav Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Chad V'Chad Ki Chorfei. Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, Rav who said 3 months, and the other one said 50 days. Okay, so it depends on the perception of the child. Some childs are perceptive at 50 days, some are at 3 months. Can a child at only 30 days recognize and only feed from one mother and not nurse from one mother and not from another? Doesn't make sense. So Kiyas Rav Meir Shapiro came from Eretz Yisrael. Omar, he said, don't listen to these rules. Don't listen to these rules that my brother, Rav Meir Shapiro had an older brother, Yehuda bar Cheskel. Right? That's the normal Rav Yehuda in the Gemara. We have Rav Yehuda. So he says, don't listen to these rules that my brother, even though Rav Yehuda is not mentioned over here as one of these three, but he says, don't listen to these rules that my brother Yehuda has listed. This is what Shmuel really said. In other words, even if it wasn't, we don't have it listed as Rav Yehuda or Shmuel, but he says, don't listen to all these rules. Usually it was Rav Yehuda who said the name of Shmuel. Don't listen to what he thinks the name of Shmuel. This is what Shmuel really said. It all depends on the child. There's no specific time, but you check out. If the child all of a sudden doesn't want to nurse from some other woman, that means because he likes his mother. Then you check it out. And then if he only recognizes the mother, meaning if he recognizes the mother and doesn't want to nurse from somebody else and refuses to, then the mother, even though she's divorced from her husband, must accept payment and nurse the child so that he shouldn't die. It's a sakana. We have a story here. He does like him in a Shmuel. A woman came before Shmuel. She refused to nurse the child. Talking about her own child, but she was divorced, let's say. She didn't want to nurse the child anymore. She came for Shmuel. She refused. She didn't want to nurse the child. Amalei, Rav Din Bar Yosef, Shmuel instructed his student, Rav Din Bar Yosef, Silbaka, go check her out. Go check out if the child will only nurse from the mother, because apparently he doesn't want to nurse. Also, he went, Osva Badarashi, he lined her up. They had like a lineup, like a police lineup. So he made a lineup of women. Among them, put the mother. And then they took the boy, they took the baby, and passed them by. Like you say, is it number one, number two, number three? They had the child pass by the women. When he came to her, He looked up with her, rejoicing. Oh, that's his mother. Recognized his mother. But she tried to turn her face away, close her eyes. She didn't want to look. Amrullah. So this Radimi said to her, lift up your eyes, come and take your child. You have to feed her. The Gemara says, well, what about a blind child who can't see his mother? How do you know when he doesn't want to, can he recognize his mother? By the taste, by the smell, and by the taste maybe of the milk, then he can recognize his mother too. So it depends on the child. If the child's willing to nurse from somebody else, so fine, let the father fire somebody else. If he's only willing to nurse from his real mother, then she must accept payment and do it against her will. What's the normal amount of time that a child nurses? So the Tanakama says it's normal for 24 months. Afterwards, it's like he's nursing a detestable thing, meaning it's frowned upon. It's not, there's no real value to it, and it's frowned upon. The rabbi said it's not proper to do. Divrei Rav Lezer, that's what Rav Lezer said. Shiur says no, which is, some people do that. They nurse even for 4 or 5 years. What's not 4 or 5? If 5, certainly 4. So Tosfos says that 4 for a healthier child, 5 years for a weaker child. A weaker child sometimes needs to nurse for 5 years. Let's say though he stopped, he ceased. We'll see how long. Let's say he ceased for a number of days after 24 months for chazar, and then he wanted to nurse again. Then you tried to nurse again. Then it's certainly like kiyonik shekes, like a detestable thing. In other words, it's frowned upon. Omar Mar, is it really like kiyonik shekes? In other words, what? What's wrong with nursing milk? Milk is kosher. What's wrong if he nurses from his mother? A minute. I might think that the fact is that you can't drink let's say horse milk or camel milk, animals which are not kosher. Their milk is not kosher, right? So you might think, what about milk of a human being? Maybe nursing is one thing, but can you drink the milk of a woman? Let's say it's put in bottles. I think it should be tamei. You can't drink it. It should be treif. The dinu. A non-kosher animal that you were makel by touching it. A non-kosher animal while it's alive, any animal while it's alive except for a Jewish person is not matame, right? While it's only tame after it's dead. So ma behema, that you were makel, you were lenient by touching. You touch a horse, you're not tame. Echmarta b'chelba, but it's milk. You were machmer and say it's tame, it's treif. Horse milk is tame. Adam shechmarta magad, a person that could become tame, like a nida or a zav. And could be matami by touching, and it didn't and say maybe you shouldn't be able to drink. In other words, maybe milk should be forbidden entirely, maybe even for a child. Maybe it should also drink milk. Talmud Lomer es hagamol kimali gever, even though it goes against our, goes against, it seems, nature. Why do mothers have milk to feed the child, right? But you might think that Talmud Lomer is like, oh, kimali gever. The camel is also because it chews its cud, but it doesn't have split hooves. Who tamei ve'ein chalav malchei? So it says who, the extra who teaches you it's tamei, but the milk of malchei shtaim, meaning people who go, that means refers to people. Animals that walk on 2 feet, that's people. They are not tamei. So milk is kosher. Yachol otzi is chalav. Okay, fine. Milk is okay. Shein shabakol, because there's many milk of many animals is kosher. Like cow milk or goat milk. Kosher animals produce kosher milk. So maybe milk we're not supposed to be machmer. Velosi is a dam, but I'm not going to exclude dam. Maybe dam of a human being should be usher, because dam of all animals is usher. You can't drink dam of any animals. So maybe dam of a person also. Talmud Lomer, who tamei ve'ein dam. Again, that's either the same word who is mamai, not only milk but also dam, only that of an animal but not of a human being. Or Rashi brings down, because it says another word in that pasuk says achazeh, this. In other words, one is excluded. The milk is excluded from who, and the blood of a person is excluded from zeh. Only of an animal, not of a human being. Right? You don't even have to say. There's not even a mitzvah drabanan. There's not even a mitzvah to say. In other words, human blood, like let's say you have a bloody tooth or something, blood in your mouth. There's no prohibition at all from swallowing that dam. So what do you see over here? That what you see that there's no isser to drink milk. The milk of a human being is totally kosher. Anybody could drink it. So why do we say that if you drink it after 24 months, if you drink it, it's like shekets, it's like disgusting. It's not mamish straight, but it's like the rabbis frowned upon. It's like it's not kosher. Lo kasha. How to parish or the low parish? Was it separate? When we say that it's mutter, is when we say it's mutter is milk. Let's say a woman produced milk and you put it in bottles, then it's mutter, right? But if somebody, according to the Tanakama, or even according to everybody, if the child was weaned and stopped drinking milk, and then later on was drinking milk again directly from his mother, from his mother's breasts, that's considered disgusting. But if it's a detestable thing. But if the milk was put in bottles, then it's okay. But by dam, it's the other way around. By dam of a person, if it was in bottled, if they bottled blood of a person, that's forbidden because we're afraid it's xavier. It's not the rice. It's xavier because we're afraid if you drink that blood, you might come to drink the blood of an animal. Why would you drink blood? If you're not a vampire, presumably because you might think it's for health reasons or whatever it was, right? So it's a little bit dumb. It's the other way around. In other words, if it's in your mouth or you're sucking it in, you have a wound or something, you suck it, that's okay. But if it's in a bottle, you can't get a tanya dam shal gabi a kikar. If dam of a person is on, let's say, a loaf of bread, go where you could scrape it off. Ochlo, you have to scrape it off first. You can't eat the bread with the blood on it. Shabana shinayim. But if you have, let's say, blood between your teeth, like I mentioned before, so you could just suck it in. Beina choshish, no concern at all. Even drop on it.
Essentially, the two examples are opposites. Right?
Yeah.
Milk, when it's separated, then you can drink it. Human milk.
Correct.
Human blood is only when it's connected.
That's correct. And that's only drop on because it's considered like a disgusting thing. Correct. It's only drop on. The question is, what are you going to be mixing up with? In other words, milk, you can drink out of a bottle because you could drink milk out of regular cow milk. You drink out of a bottle too. But to drink it out of it from a person after she's weaned the child already is considered disgusting. Yeah. Any human being. Yeah.
Doesn't matter if he's Jewish.
No, it doesn't have to be Jewish. We could have a wet nurse who's a shiksa also. It's not.
That's for milk.
Yeah.
Talking about blood.
Oh, blood. Same thing. The same
blood
thing. Yeah, the same thing. Because you can't eat a person. There's a whole question about of a busser of a person. That's a whole discussion among theirs. I saw in the Mefarshim a weird thing that there was the rabbis frowned upon. There was a skula for having male children take a gulp, swallowing the arla that was cut off at her bris from a male child. They said somebody, there was a custom in some localities, let's say, that that was a minhag. It was a school at having a boy. Can you imagine? That was the school of, and other rabbis frowned upon it because the basar b'nad a missus, and you can't. It's not kosher really to eat. Whatever. Okay, it's a whole complicated discussion. Okay. Amar. Rabbi says, no, not true. That even now, he might agree that once it was weaned, once you stop eating, once the baby stopped the drinking, then for a period of time, then you couldn't go back. But the original machlok is how long is it proper to wean? Is it for up to 2 years, or is it even 4 or 5 years? Or Yeshua said even 4 or 5 years. Even if even if the kid is already carrying something on his shoulder, right? Like the child's older, right? Even if he's carrying something, he can still be winning. That's not more than 4 or 5 years. It's the same shear. He can carry his backpack, whatever, to school when he's 4 or 5. And there are cases. Many people nurse for several years. They don't just give up. These kind of people who believe in nursing. Amar Rabbi Yosef. Allah Rabbi Yeshua, the Allah like Yeshua. So since Rabbi Yosef said the Allah like Yeshua that you could nurse for 4 or 5 years, that's normal, and that's what he says. So now we're going to bring up a few other halachas that have nothing to do with our Gemara, but Rabbi Yosef Paskin like them also, and Rabbi Yosef halachas like that. So we'll bring them down. Tanya, gonech of a person, let's say he has angina or a certain chest pain, and they believe that goat's milk was very healthy for that, was the remedy. Goat's milk was good for people who had angina. So he could do, and it's Shabbos, yonik cholav b'Shabbos. You can go over a cow and nurse from the child, suckle from the cow on Shabbos. normally you can't milk a cow on Shabbos. It's mafarik, which is separating something from its growth, not something attached to the ground. That's different. That's talishman mechuber. This is mafarik. Mafarik is a told of dash, which is threshing, separating one thing from its normal place that it grows. Right? Let's say if you have tfu, you have grain, and you thresh it, you stomp on it in order to separate the inside from the outside. So the same way you're not allowed to milk on Shabbos. All the dairy farms, what do they call the milk places? The milk, the chalava. No, what's the word for the hachlava? Yeah, the hachlava. But what's the name? How do you say that in English? I forgot already. Whatever. Anyway, the dairy farms, the milkeries, whatever. So those places, how do they do those on Shabbos? So they have automatic machines and things like that. They get around Shabbos because you can't really milk the cow on Shabbos. But let's say a person is sick and he needs goat's milk on Shabbos. He can suckle directly from the udder of the goat on Shabbos. Why is he allowed to do that? My time. We're not talking about where his life is in danger. Life is in danger. You could do anything for a person's life in danger. It's my time. Because when people don't normally nurse directly from a goat. They will milk the goat and then drink the milk in a bottle or a carton or something, right?
You can milk cow or both the goat on Shabbos if that animal
is in pain, right? Is in pain. That's a separate thing, right? Those are extenuating circumstances. And extenuating circumstances, yes, you can. But basically you can't, and even then it should be done with a shinui, like we see over here. This is considered shuni. Yonik mafar kalachiyat, because a person nursing directly from a goat is considered unusual. And mokmatsar, and when the person is in pain, look goes up one where not goes there, they didn't make a decree against doing that. So so it's not directly a malacha, it's not a real malacha mafarik because it's kalachiyat, therefore it's unusual, it's not the normal way it's done, it's not really mafarik. And the Rabbanan said you still shouldn't do it, but in Makom Tzar there it goes. Rav Yosef said it's brought down because the law is like him. Here again, Rav Yosef said the law is like Rav Nas. Tanya Nachum Ishgaya. Nachum Ishgaya said the following thing. Sino Shalbuk, let's say on Shabbos he had a pipe on the house, like a gutter, and some straw, stubble, grass, whatever grew in there, and that was causing the water to flow onto the roof of the house and then down onto your dining room table. Mamachem braglo, you can crush the straw, whatever, in the tube, in the pipe, whatever, the gutter. You can crush it with your foot on Shabbos. B'tzina, do it, b'tzina, not publicly, but do it privately on Shabbos. No concern, my time. Because again, this is repairing something in an unusual way by stomping on it with your foot. Makom Seder, when there's a loss because you're losing your food and your house is under attack from the water. Well, goes the Rabbanim where he goes. You're going to say the halacha is like him. So even though these rules, these halachas were unrelated, they're related only because Rabbi Yosef said the halacha is like them. All right, so we said Pirsh Lachar Besum Chodesh B'Chazer V'Kerek Sheker. So we said that again. Everybody seems to agree. There's a machlokas whether a child should nurse for 24 months or even 4 or 5 years. But once he stopped, then you shouldn't nurse anymore. The kama. So we said over here, kama means what? What's considered stopping? So Rav Yehuda. So first the Gemara was out that Rav Yehuda Rav Kiva said it directly. He said the name of Shmuel Shloshis Yomim. 3 days. If you stop for 3 days, that's considered stopping. And going back now is considered detestable. Again, some say that Rav Yehuda Bar Chiva brought it down as a brisa. Tani Rav Yehuda Bar Chiva coming to Shmuel. He learned the brisa in front of Shmuel. Shmuel was an Amora, so we said he learned a brisa from Shmuel. Shlosh Yom said it 3 days. Tana Rabbanan. Okay, we're going to come to this as a throwback to Yavams. We learned Menekesh Shemeis Ba'ala. A woman is nursing her child, and her husband dies. She wants to get remarried. What's the problem? That if she gets remarried and she becomes pregnant immediately, that will stop the milk. She won't produce milk anymore. At the beginning, the milk will be turbid, it won't be good, and later on, it might stop the milk altogether. That's the cycle of women. In other words, when they become as they while they're pregnant, in the later stages of pregnancy, they produce milk, right? As they get ready to nurse their child, as the child is born, their breasts enlarge and they become full of milk. But at the early stages, it stops the milk that's wrong. So here's the problem. Her husband died, in the middle of 24 months when she's nursing a child. Not only she shouldn't get married, she shouldn't even get engaged. You get engaged, you're afraid you'll not get married also, and what'll happen? And she will get pregnant. The child won't be able to nurse, and her husband is not going to pay for milk and eggs for the child because it's not his child. Her husband died, right? The father of the child's dead. The new husband says, what do I have to feed that kid? Let him die. I don't care. So that's the problem. So she shouldn't get married. Or even engaged until 24 months after she started feeding the child. After nursing the child. That's Rav Meir Shapiro. See, Rav Meir is the most chomertic. Usually in a machlokes between Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda, we go like a Yehuda, but we'll see. Rav Yehuda's matter even 18 months. 18 months is enough. That's all you have to feed the child. If he nurses for 18 months, that's enough. We said before, some children can nurse 4 or 5 years, Rav Yeshua said, but Rabbi Lezer, the basic idea is that it's 24 months is the usual period for weaning. That's what we had. 2 years, he made a party. They used to make a party after they weaned the child, etc. So Rav Nassim bar Yosef, or the gear is Rav Yonasan bar Yosef. What do you need this machlokes between Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda? The earlier rabbis, Beishamai still argued about the same thing. So Beishamai says 20 Esrei B'chodesh, Beisalomim Shmona Asar Chodesh, and they still said the normal time of nursing is 18 months, not 24 months. I'm sure Shimon says Aniya Chriya, or the gear says Aniya Farish. I will explain. Rabbi Beisil and Beishamai, we're not talking about how when she can get remarried if her husband died. Right? The Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda says, how soon can a nursing mother get married after her husband died? Meir says you got to wait 24 months of nursing, and Rav Yehuda said 18 months is enough in terms of getting married. Beisil B'Sham weren't talking about getting remarried. They were just talking about how long does a kid nurse? Does a kid nurse for 24 months? B'Sham and Beisil says 18 months. So I'll explain. With Divrei Omer Esrim Bar B'Chodesh, the one who says Beisil who says that nurses for 24 months, Beishamai, who says, nurses for 24 months, she can already get married 21 months. Meaning, Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Meir are arguing about when can she get married, 24 months or 18 months, right? Beisil and Beishamai are arguing how long must she nurse. So what's that? Beisil Beishamai who says she must nurse for 24 months admits that she can get remarried at 21 months. And the one who says the one they still says she nurses for 18 months. That's the normal amount of nursing time. She get married 3 months earlier at 15 months. Why? As soon as she gets married, let's say she gets married and right away she gets pregnant that night. The milk doesn't stop right away. It doesn't get turbid and bad right away. It takes 3 months for that to happen. So therefore, according to Beisilo, let's say Beisilo goes like Rabbi Yehuda, that you nurse for 18 months, right? That's the normal nursing time. But if that's the normal nursing, Rabbi Yehuda says she can't get married till 18 months. Beisilo would say, no, nurses for 18 months, so she can get married after 15 months, because even if she gets pregnant right away, the milk won't go bad for 3 more months. So Ula says that what? You can't get married, you can get married after 18 months. Rav Chanina was mad for me. I also had a case like that. I married a nursing mother. I get after 50 months, like Beis Hillel, because Beis Hillel says you nurse for 18 months, but you can get married after 15 months. Story. Arisha Abaya, the sharecropper of Abaya, Aslik Hamed Abaya, came from Amalei, Mali Ors B'Chamesh Chodesh. Can I get married? Can I get engaged? So can I get engaged after 15 months? He came for about, this is a big lesson in Paskening Halachas too here. So his sharecropper came to him and said, listen, can I get married? Obviously he was a Jew. And he said, can I get married? Can I get engaged after 15 months? In other words, the woman that I'm dating has been nursing for 15 months. Her husband died or divorced or whatever. Can I get engaged to her after 15 months of nursing? Amalei, yes. He said, yes, I'll tell you why. First, he says, number one, normally machlokes Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda, we pass on Rav Yehuda who says 18 months. Oh, and Ula said, like Rav Yehuda, that what? That 18 months is all you need. But Maruk said, Li to Rav Chanina says, like we just quoted. Rav Chanina was matter me to get married after 50 months, merely like Beis Hillel. Because even if you nurse for 18 months, If you get married after 15 months and you get pregnant right away, the milk won't go bad for 3 more months. Kolshkein, the adla aris. In other words, you're asking me, can I get engaged after 15 months? According to Beis, so you can get married after 15 months. So certainly you're only asking about it, certainly you're allowed to. That's what he paskin. Abaya paskin to this sharecropper. Just like Rabbi Yosef, when Abaya came for Rabbi Yosef, his Rebbe, Amalei, and he brought up the question again. Amalei, what are you talking about? Rabbi Shmuel Damar Tabayo, Tzrich Lampen, Esmer B'Chodesh. You got to wait full 24 months. Chutz miyom shalom. But besides the day that the kid was born, in other words, besides that day that he was born, you start counting the 24 months from the next day. But chutz miyom shalom sarasma. Besides that, you got engaged. In other words, we go the chumrah over here. Why? Because machlokes Rav Meir Shapiro usually passing Rav Yehuda, but the halach is like Rav Meir we had back on the Zion a few days ago. Big Zayrosav and it's Xaver, so we passing like Rav Meir over here. Rod Basrei. So now Abaya realized that he passing the wrong halach for the sharecropper because his own Rebbe told him you got to wait 24 months, not 15 months. Rod Basrei ran after him plus a parsi 3 parasangs. Some say Amila parsa b'chala 1 parsa, but in sand, it was below Adbachai, and he couldn't reach him. He couldn't find him. In other words, he couldn't retract his psak. Amar Abaya, Hi Milsa Amar Rabbanan. So Abaya said, I learned a lesson here. This things that the rabbi said, Hi Milsa Amar Rabbanan. Afilu Be'esav B'Kuschala L'Shrei. Be'esav B'Kuschala is an example of something which doesn't really need much of a psak. Are you allowed to eat an egg in milk? Right? What are eggs? Are eggs parv? Are they milchik? Or are they fleshik? You could raise that question. The chicken is fleshik, right? Is sari, so shouldn't the egg be? Right? Shouldn't the egg be? But the answer is no. The egg is parv, and everybody knows that. So even a child simple that, can I have an egg with milk? Can I have a cheese omelet? Let's put it in my language. Can I have a cheese omelet? Yeah, the answer is, of course, even something that's simple, lo lishri inish makom rabbi. You're not allowed to pass on halacha before your rabbi. I had this thing, B'didi Haviyovda. The Gemara is going to say here, we had this B'didi Haviyovda, if we're going to see that in a second. Haviyovda, 51 years ago, this Rosh Hashanah, 51 years ago, I was mugged, Erev Rosh Hashanah, the night of Rosh Hashanah, after we ate in the mess hall at the yeshiva, and I went to a place where I was sleeping, and a guy mugged me, and he took a gun out, and he hit me on the head, and I fell down. Okay, nothing. I didn't suffer any serious things, but psychologically, I was a little bit messed up. So the next morning, I went to ask Rav Yonas and David, who was Rav Hutner, Zechron Bracha's son-in-law, and he was my teacher, my Rebbe in the yeshiva. I asked Rav Yonas and David if I have to bench gomel. Bench gomel. I was mugged the night before. A guy took a gun. He almost shot me. I thought I was dead, and he didn't shoot me. Do I have to bench gomel? So he looked at me. There were 600 guys there in the yeshiva. Looked at me. I'm like, I'm crazy. Can't paskin halach in front of this Rebbe, bro. It was right there. So I had to. It was 50 years ago, not 51. 50 years ago, I had to go over and ask for a foot in front of everybody. So the psak was. He asked me, did he shoot? I said, no, I'm here. If you were shot, it was point blank. I wouldn't be here. So he said, shvach v'odah daf seged, and you have to give shvach, you have to give thanks to God, but you don't make a bracha. You only make a bracha on the 4 things that the Gemara tells you, right? You cross the seas, you come out of the hospital, etc., got out of jail, whatever. Those are the things that you only bench gomel. Today, every shmendrik who he says, oh, I nicked my finger at bench gomel, I get bench gomel. You don't make a bracha lightly. Anyway, that was a psak. But the point was, he wouldn't paskin, Rav wouldn't paskin in front of his Rebbe, even something which he knew the answer to. That's what Abai said over here. I thought I knew the answer. It was a simple question. For Beis Hillel says you can get married after 50 months. So I told this guy, of course you can get engaged at 50 months. No. When I went to my Rebbe, I said, he told me, no, you got to wait 24 months. So he says, even something as simple as is an egg and milk, can you eat that? You shouldn't be mati. You shouldn't pass a shal in front of your Rebbe. Not because it looks like you're like chutzpah, you consider yourself on the level with your Rebbe, because like Mepharshim say, even if the Rebbe's mochel, you're not allowed to. Even if the Rebbe's mochel on his cup, you're not allowed to. You won't be successful to say it properly. Why? I knew that Rav Shmuel said to be passing like Rav Meir, that it's 24 months, but I wasn't successful. In other words, the rabbi said, don't paskin halach in front of your Rebbe. It's wrong. If somebody comes over to ask you a question in front of the rabbi and you think you know the answer, no, you have to tell them to go to the rabbi. That's the halach. Tan Rabbanan. Let's say a woman gave her child over to a wet nurse, or she had weaned him, mace, or the child died. The child died. What's the word? Well, in a case like that, there's a wet nurse, or she weaned him already. All this problem is when she's, the thing we're discussing about 24 months, 18 months, 15 months, that's speaking about when she's nursing the child. And the word that the milk will dry up and the child will die. But if there's no child anymore because she gave it to a wet nurse, or she's weaned him, or the child died, you're allowed to. Papa Rav Huna of Yeshua, so they wanted to paskin like that price, allowed to. So there was an elderly woman who said to him, Bididi Habayovda. No, Maisa Shahaya, something happened to me. It was a case like that. I wanted to get remarried. And the Asali Rav Nachman. And Rav Nachman forbade me from getting remarried. Forbade me from getting remarried. Rashi says, forbade me from getting married. Is there Rashi here? No, there's no Rashi. No, there's no Rashi. We should forbid me getting married in a situation like this, even though there was no concern. Is that really true? Rav Nachman Sharla Beirish Galusa, that the people in the house of the Reish Galusa, they actually like the president of the country, the secular head of the Jewish people, the temporal head. They had a lot of money there. They were rich and powerful and scary people. And he allowed the women in that family to get remarried if there was a situation. If a woman was nursing, gave the child over to a wet nurse, she can get remarried right away. You don't have to wait the 18 months or the 50 months. The Shani Reish Galusa Bilo Harabu. That's different because a wet nurse wouldn't quit on them. If you gave the child to a wet nurse, she wouldn't say, I had enough, I'm quitting, because she's afraid of their power. That's different. But in a normal case, you are worried. Why? Because what if you gave it to a wet nurse? Maybe she'll quit and you have to come back to you and you have to feed the kid. And if your milk dries up because you got remarried and pregnant again, that's a problem. Same thing if she weaned him, she tried to wean him, maybe it didn't take. So therefore, you can't get remarried even in those circumstances. Amlur Papi, Vatun Lo Tizbra. What are you bringing a kasha from the woman over here? You thought you were going to go like the brisa that said get married right away, and then the woman told you. The elderly woman said, "No, Rav Nachman forbade me from doing it." I'll show you. You should have known anyway that you can't do it, Meha. The time you should have had a kasha from this. Isn't it a question from this brisa? The Tanya Hareisha Isra Dufa. Let's say a woman was always. There are women who are not happy at home, and they're always at their mother's house, right? They're always in their father's house. They're always anxious to go. Oshaya Lakas Beis Bala. There was a fight. They were separated. Her husband. There was a fight there. She ran home to her mother. Going home to my mother. Oshaya Bala Chosh. Her husband was in jail. In cases like that where she's not living as husband and wife, and there's no concern that she's pregnant. Now we're talking is there concern she's pregnant. Her husband was overseas for an extended period of time. Her husband was old, or sick, or she was a barren woman, or she was an old woman, she was 80 years old and couldn't have children anymore. Islanders, she didn't have any womanly characteristics. A child couldn't be pregnant. But let's say her husband died and then she miscarried. Is there a chance that she's pregnant? Of course not. Still, she's not capable of having children, whatever the reason was. In all these cases, right? Remember, we have a rule that you can't get married. Once you're married, you can't get married to anybody else within 3 months because you're worried you won't know whose child it is. Is it a 7-month baby from the new husband or a 9-month-old from the old husband? But what happens if there's no chance that she's pregnant after the husband's gone? He's in jail. He's been in jail forever. They didn't have conjugal visits in those days, or whatever. The reason he's sick, he's old, he's overseas, whatever it is, still have to wait 3 months as Rav Meir. That's the rule. Rabbi Yossi Matal Yos Lasamiya, Gomer Nachman Shmuel, Halachah Rav Meir, because we always passing Rav Meir when he's machmir with Xerid Rabbanan, we have passing like Rav Meir. So when it comes to Xerid Rabbanan, you wait 3 months, in all circumstances. The same thing with the 24 months. Even if this case is different because she gave it to a wet nurse and there's no concern. No, 24 months is a standard rule. So isn't your problem there? So the answer to them, we said over here, Rav Papa and Rav Fun, Rav Shua wanted to pass like that case, and we didn't think of that. You're right. That's that case. The halacha though is meis mutter. The halacha, the psak is though, if the kid is dead, there's absolutely nothing to worry about. There's nothing can go wrong. The kid's dead. There's no concern about it. The kid's dead, it's mutter to get married right away. Gamlasu, but if she gave him to a wet nurse or she tried to wean him, whatever, no, she can't get married in 24 months because she's worried he'll still come back to you, or because it's Xer. Once you make the Xer is for all cases where the child is alive. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so like the case example, let's say she had a, she had a hysterectomy, what we'd say today, she had a hysterectomy. So well, why can't she give birth within 3 months? She's not having a child. There's no concern about who the child's going to be. She has hysterectomy. She's not having children. The answer is they made Xer. Xer is in all ways. We make Xer in low post. We don't make any difference, right? But maybe she only weaned him. Why if she weaned him and if a nurse can't she get remarried? Maybe she only weaned him in order to get married. She didn't want to come to the husband didn't want the new child, right? So she weaned him for that reason. Maybe the kid will still want a nurse from her, and therefore you're not allowed to get married for 24 months unless the kid's not alive anymore. Even if the kid is dead, also it's usher. Why? Because maybe she killed him. Maybe she killed him in order to get married. So therefore we say, even if you kill him, you can't get remarried right away. There was a story like that. And she strangled her own child in order to get remarried. That's not the halacha. That woman was nuts, was crazy, was an imbecile. The law of din people don't normally strangle their children, and therefore, if the child is dead, it's takamutter for her to get married right away. Let's say a wet nurse was given a child to nurse. So what are the rules regarding this wet nurse? She has to be totally dedicated to one child. She can't nurse her own child, and she can't nurse somebody else's child. But let's say part of the arrangement with the wet nurse is that she will get paid and she'll be given food. Let's say they're only going to give her X amount of food and she's hungry, she needs more, but she can eat a lot. What does that mean? She has to take her own food. We'll see that. Talking about she shouldn't eat things. She shouldn't eat food, though. She should take her job seriously and should not eat food. She shouldn't live on cigarettes and booze, as we would say today, right? She shouldn't eat things that are unhealthy, bad for the milk.
Beer is supposed to be good.
Oh, we'll talk about that. So first of all, what do you mean says she can't nurse her own child. The wet nurse can't nurse her own child as well as somebody else. She can't nurse her own child. Certainly she can't nurse somebody else's child, take another child like a third child. Says no, no, I think listen, her own child she shouldn't nurse together with this child that she was hired to nurse, because her own child, since she loves the child, she might supply him with most of the milk. Most are loving mamsila, but a child of somebody else, could she take 2 children on to nurse? You might say that one, if it wouldn't be that she had surplus milk, she produced a lot of milk, she wouldn't supply some. I think it's okay. Kamash will know that if you were hired to nurse a child, you have to be dedicated to that child only. Paska Kim, if she was, if the arrangement was that she was going to give X amount of food, like a small amount of food, she still should eat a lot because that's what's necessary for the health of the child that she's nursing. Where is she going to get it from? If she's only, she has to take her own food. In other words, even if she was only hired, let's say, for $5 a day, plus a lachmaniyah, and she needs more than that, she has to feed her own. Low suffering, she shouldn't eat she shouldn't eat when she's nursing that child are wrong, things that are bad. Mining and water considered bad things. And Rav Kanaka going kashus is hops, the chazis lichen, dug and small fish, badama, and like clay or kind of an earth that they ate. Don't eat those things, those are bad, they produce bad milk. If I am rafilu, even pumpkins, and quinces, or papa rafilu, it looks like the same word. Rashi's gives in the second one as kura is like heart palm. It grows around the bark of a tree. Shouldn't eat that. But kufra, what is kufra? Rashi tells us is unripe dates. Those things are all bad for milk. Rashi mafilu kimcha v'harsana. Even kimcha is like a milk, a concoction of milk kusach, which is made with sour milk. That's also bad. V'harsana fish ash is also no good. All those things are not good for the milk. Now, some of these things, some of these stop the milk up totally. In other words, they cause her to cease producing milk. And some just turn the milk sour or turbid. The Misham Gemara goes on to explain about bad foods. The Misham or things that you do wrong in having children. The Misham a woman who conceives at a mill, and as if she has bia there. She will have children that faint, children that are like epileptic. The Mishamsha al-Ara, if they have bia on the ground, they'll have long neck children. The Darcha al-Dama, if she walks over donkey blood, and if she steps on donkey blood, girdani, she will have children who are balding. The achla chardal, if she eats mustard, she will have children who are gluttons. The achla tachli, if she eats cress, dulfini, she will have children, not dolphins, but children who are always their eyes are always leaking water, watery eyes. Okay, the achla munini is small fish. They will have children who are always squinting or opening and closing their eyes. They're always closing and opening their eyes. Dachla gargushta, if she eats clay, she'll have ugly children. The shasi shekh, if she drinks beer, let's call it their beer. You have dark children, dark or black children. The achla bisra, b'shasi chamra, if she eats meat and drinks good wine, she will have healthy children. The achla bay, if you eat eggs, inani, she will have children with large eyes. The achla kivri, if you eat fish, she'll have children who are graceful. The achla karpsa, if you eat parsley, zivsni, they have children who are full of shining, beautiful children, shining children. The achla kuzbarta, if you eat coriander, besrani, you will have balibasar, stout, heavy, thick children. The achla esrog, if you eat children, this is assuming while she's pregnant, these things, if she eats these things while she's pregnant. The other thing's talking about having bia. Here we're talking about eating things presumably while she's pregnant. It's like teaching a derech eretz. If you eat an esrog, she'll have children who are fragrant, good smelling. The daughter of Shvor the king, achla ba ima esroga, her mother ate esrogim while she was pregnant with her. That's what she did. She would bring, when she was born, she would bring the child in front of her father. She was like their chief fragrance. Like the best fragrance they could get was the child itself, because the child had, so to speak, been fed esrogim while she was in utero. Rav Huna tested us. What happens? Let's say she says, we discussed this before a few blocks back. Let's say she says, I want to nurse the child. He doesn't want her to nurse the child. He wants to hire a wet nurse. Showman law, we listen to her. It's Sarah Dida. Rashi learns that Sarah Dida is that if she has milk in her breasts and she can't nurse, it's very painful. He has to get rid of the milk. So we listen to her. Her tsar comes first. Others learn that tsar is the tsar of nefesh, that she wants to be close to the child, or etc. But the Rashi learns that it's physical pain. So we listen to her. Let's say he says, no, I want you to nurse, and she doesn't want to nurse. Now, or if it's not the custom of her family to nurse, she doesn't want to nurse. Her family, nobody in her family, mother didn't nurse, her grandmother didn't nurse. She doesn't want to nurse. So Shamallah, you listen to her. You can't force her to do something that's painful for her. But what happens if it is the custom in her family and it's not the custom in his family? In his family, they're rich. They hire wet nurses, and it's not nurse. But he wants her to nurse when she doesn't. The opposite of their families. My basar days when you go basar his family, or basar you go basar her family. Pashtinula, and we decided the question. This from this memra. She rises up with him in his stature and doesn't go down. So if in his family they don't nurse, she doesn't have to nurse either if she doesn't want to, because that's considered rising. It lies in stature. They can hire a wet nurse and she doesn't have to if she doesn't want to. I'm going to go to micro. Where do you see this in the pasuk that she rises up in stature? In other words, she takes on the advantages of her husband, but not the disadvantage. See this in the pasuk. Pasuk is vehi ba'ulas baal, and she is the wife, or she has been slept with her husband. She is the husband. What does that mean? Ba'ulas baal, that she has been slept with her husband. Baal, we translate it to mean Baal yasa shabal. She goes up with him, beloved also. She goes up with him in stature, doesn't go down. So if in his family they don't nurse and she doesn't want to nurse, he can't force her to nurse. This pasuk, and beginning of Bereshit, it says she was the mother of all living things. It's given for living, but not for tsar, and it's mitzar her if she doesn't want to nurse. You can't force her to nurse. All right, we'll pick him here tomorrow. It's Hashem. Have a good day, everybody. Good week. Shavua tov.